your socks! Hey!
The Lost Art with Andrew Cox podcast, now streaming on all major podcast platforms. A Till Valhalla Project ambassador. Thanks for tuning in to the podcast that's given a voice to our veterans. The Lost Art with Andrew Cox. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Lost Art Podcast, that podcast giving a voice to our veterans. I'm your host, Andrew Cox, and today we're having a My Veteran Story. But before we get into the episode, are you enjoying the podcast? And make sure you go to the website. That's thelostart.podbean.com. Go check us out. And if there's any way you can help us in getting our veteran voices out for all to hear, please do so. Also, big shout out to the Till Valhalla Project out there doing amazing things. If you can help them out in any way, please do so. Go to their website. That's tillvalhallaproject.com. And last but not least, I want to give a big shout out to the Marine Corps League, allowing me to be an ambassador for that great organization. If you're out there, you're a Marine, and you're not part of the Marine Corps League, I encourage you, go check them out. Go become a member of the Marine Corps League. You can go check that out at mcleague.org. Same team, new mission. The Marine Corps League, a legacy of valor. Once a Marine, always a Marine, is familiar to us all. It is that feeling you get when you see a Marine Corps sticker on a car or home proudly displaying the Marine Corps flag. We know we can knock on the door and that Marine will be there for us. Despite our many years of service to different causes, we all have that common bond. We have all earned the privilege to wear the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor. The Marine Corps League is the only congressionally chartered Marine Corps veteran service organization, with detachments in 1,150 communities across the U.S. Please take a few minutes to check it out. Visit today at mcleague.org or email tribe@mcleague.org. All right. With that, I got Ashley here. Or I'm sorry, Victoria. Why did I say Ashley? I apologize. Victoria Rushakoff. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'd be doing better if my memory was better, but that's okay. That's the way it goes sometimes. You get older and it all just kind of starts floating away.
I look like I could be an Ashley.
There you go. Yeah, I appreciate you going along with it. That's good. That's good. So let's kind of start with you and where you grew up and kind of talk us about that a little bit, and then what drew you to military service.
Sure. So I grew up in Poughkeepsie, New York. Small family, mom, dad, me and my brother. My dad was in the Air Force for 4 years. He did some security stuff with them as an officer, but I really never grew up. I wouldn't say like I grew up in a military family or anything. And going through school, I had no real knowledge about it. Didn't have any intention of going in the military. Wasn't going to pursue anything music wise. If anything, I was looking on the sports side. So going into my senior year of high school, I was talking to a bowling coach at my top college choice and a softball coach at my second college choice, and I was going to go for criminal justice.
Oh, wow.
And I thought I had it all planned out and took my ACT, was getting everything ready to do some scholarships. And I don't know if it was end of fall break or I think over Thanksgiving break, I was sleeping in and my mom woke me up and was like, "Hey, there's a recruiter on the phone. He said he wants to talk to you." And I don't like saying no to people. So I was like, sure, why not? So I got on the phone with him. He just wanted to ask me some questions. And then he found out I played clarinet. And all of a sudden, his tone changed and he got so excited. And he was like, "No way, really? Could we talk about this more? Could I come to your house? Would that be okay? Can we sit down and talk?" I don't know. And my mom was like, "Go for it." So we did. He came over and started talking about this Marine Corps musician program and how there was no commitment to try out. I could just do this audition and see if I made it. And even if I made it, I didn't have to commit to the military. So again, my mom just kind of pushed like, "Sure, why not? Just try it out, see how you do."
Yeah.
And so I agreed to it, and we ended up getting me set up, I started having private clarinet lessons and did this first audition. I absolutely tanked it. It was so bad. And they didn't tell me how bad. Now looking back, I know how bad it was, but they didn't tell me that. They said, you could use some improvement. I think after you take some more lessons, you could really get better at this. And I think you could make it and maybe take another shot at it. I don't like failure, so I
Yeah.
agreed to try again.
Do you
Fast
remember
forward,
who it was that auditioned you?
um, I remember, I can't remember his name at this point. No, was it Gunny Bly? Bly.
Bly? Yeah.
He
Okay.
played
Yeah, I know
guitar.
Bly. Yeah.
Yeah. He was very nice about it, but definitely, yeah, I was like, I think you could do it eventually. Just keep working at it. So fast forward about 3 auditions later,
Okay.
and he's like, all right, next one, I think you've got it. You are right on the line. Like you can do it. And I was like, sweet. So I've been working on this solo with my teacher. And then they changed the whole curriculum and
Mm,
it went in a solo to the excerpts. So
right.
I had to then work on all these excerpts. So kind of start from, felt like starting over from the bottom. And then also the person auditioning me changed to, it was then Staff Sergeant Kine. So
Hmm.
since now I had a reed player, that he was also a bit tougher on some of the aspects that go along with being a reed player.
Right.
So I failed my 4th audition. And I was like,
Okay.
oh, but you're right there. You're so close. Just one more, and you'll have it. So by this point, I had already been a guest attending all the PTs at the recruiting station, and
Yeah.
I loved it. I had so much fun doing all the physical stuff and pushing myself. And it was mostly the guys, but I felt like I was one of the guys. And I just fell in love with the camaraderie. I was like, you know what? The Marine Corps is the best. I want to be the best. I'm just gonna
Very
I'm
nice.
I'm gonna enlist. They really think I'm gonna get it this next time. Let's just do it. So I went up to MEPS and it had been scheduled already because they thought I was gonna pass that one. So I went up to MEPS and enlisted,
Okay.
came back, did another audition a couple months later, and I did not pass.
Oh no.
Another failure. So that's 5 failed auditions. And at this point, they said, look, you've already enlisted. You've had 5 auditions. You still haven't passed. You're not going to be good enough. So you need to just go to boot camp with something else. So I picked
Okay.
a different job and I was signed up for a 5-year contract for mass communications.
Okay. Yeah.
And I shipped off to boot camp and I went through, I got to family day or the day before family day. And
Hmm.
I was chosen as the company honor graduate. So I had this luncheon with some officers and Sergeant Major on base, and they asked, how'd you get interested in the Marine Corps? And we're going around the table answering, and it was my turn, and I told them about the whole clarinet thing. And again,
Yeah.
they were so excited. And I was like, what? What's with these people finding a musician? And they're like, well, you're a female musician. You're like a unicorn. So and this officer, which he wasn't even supposed to be there, he was taking someone else's place that wasn't able to make it. He's like, what if I had a clarinet for you tomorrow? What do you think? Would you want to try it out again? And I laughed. I thought he was joking. And I was like, I didn't pass 5 times. I've been 3 months without playing. There's no way I would
Yeah.
pass now. Like, funny. But like, sure, yeah, sure, I'd try. And he wasn't joking. I went to the family day activities, and then my drill instructor was like, hey, they've got a clarinet for you at the band hall or something. So tomorrow after graduation, you're going to go over there and sit down with them at the band hall. And so I started panicking, and there was this girl. It actually was it Ammon? There was someone in my sister platoon that was also a band player,
Okay.
and so she helped me with the scales. And we were going over the scales again. I'm like panicking. I'm not good enough, but I'm gonna try. Went over and sat down, and they just gave me some scales and some sight reading and just had me just play a few things and said, you know what, we're just going to give her a shot. Sure, we need clarinet players. We need the
Okay.
top fill.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I couldn't change the 5 years, so I kept a 5 year band contract. They switched it over over the phone, did a statement of understanding switch, and I ended up went to MCT like normal, but then went to the Naval School of Music.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a rank behind at first, being that when you originally enlist as a musician, you have that automatic
The
promotion.
right, yeah, the
Um,
Marine Enlisted Option Program thing that gives you that leg up. Yeah.
right. So I missed out on that, but since I was the honor grad, I got a meritorious promotion, but I was 3 months behind.
Mm-hmm.
And got there, did my incoming, and got pulled into the office and told, no, you got an untrainable score. You are untrainable on the clarinet. This is not good. I think I got like a 3 or something. I don't remember exactly what, but it was very, very low.
Yeah.
And you were there. I'm sure that was talk about it, but and so just from the very start, being told that I was untrainable and I was a failure, and the Marine Corps screwed me over because I would never make it past the rank of corporal,
Right.
and that sent me into a really bad place mentally. This was the first time that I had been away from my parents. I was on my
Mm-hmm.
own, and all my teenage years growing up, I had been told how mature I was. I really thought I was mature, and I was in the aspect that I was very respectful and polite, and I was always a goody two shoes, and so it came across as mature. But as I learned then, I really didn't know anything about life.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so it was a pretty hard reality to deal with. I really hadn't failed in my life either. Even the biggest failure I could think of was not making the varsity A team in high school. I was on varsity B team, and like, that was hard for me to deal with. And
Right.
that really has no effect on my life. Now I'm being told like, hey, this is now your job. You've just signed your life away for these years, and if you don't pass this clarinet assessment, you're going to get sent off somewhere else to do some other job, and who knows what the future will hold. So that was really really scary for me. So I worked really hard, but still it's just being shut in that little room, soundproof room, to
Yeah.
practice for hours on end, and just being told over and over that I was a failure. I kept trying to remind myself this is what I signed up for. I knew that the military was hard. I don't want it to be soft. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's good the way that it is. It should be tough, but I started thinking that this really wasn't for me. I don't think I'm built for this. My skin's not tough enough. So I felt guilty for feeling like such a victim and having
Mm-hmm.
that bad mentality, because I knew like this wasn't I needed to get tougher skin, but I didn't know how to do it. So yeah, that's when my depression started.
Mm-hmm.
Ended up in a psych ward there. And I really didn't know what was going to happen, but I just knew I had to get out of there. I had to prove everybody wrong. I had to turn it
Right.
around. So I worked my booty off and ended up passing. I did it. Got out of the school of music, graduated, and my first duty station was Paris Island. So
It's
um,
right back where you came from then.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't really think much of it at first. I was happy because I was going to be back with a couple of my friends from NAVSOM. And I got there and checked in, went to my first barracks room, and they're like, all right, well, here it is. And my roommate had squished everything over into this dark corner, and I had the broken drawers and the tilted
Oh
bed,
no.
all the stuff she didn't want. Obviously, 'cause she didn't know that she
Yeah.
was gonna be a roommate that soon, I guess. But so it was all shoved into the corner, and it was all dark, and I just was like, really? Okay, well, I'll figure it out. So I started moving stuff around, and well, got up for PT the next morning. Walk out in my green on green, and the stars are still out, and I hear the recruits yelling in the background, and I was like, are you kidding me? I'm back. I'm back here, and that it was not a good feeling. And then I think it was only a couple days in, I ended up getting an ovarian cyst that ruptured, and I was in
Oh
so much
wow.
mean, I didn't know what was going on. I was on the barracks floor crying at night and I didn't know what to do. And no one was like, "Oh, let's get help or anything." So the duty was my friend too. So we just kind of like sat there talking and I managed to get like 2 hours of sleep and woke up the next morning and I was not in a good spot again. So long story short, ended up at the hospital and then through them talking to me, ended up in the psych ward again for a couple days. So not a very good start for me.
So but you had, now did you get surgery or anything, or what happened with the cyst?
No, so they did the scan to figure out what it was, and once they confirmed that it was the cyst, it had ruptured. So
Oh, I
kind of
see. Okay.
you just have to wait till it dissipates completely. So yeah, went there for a little bit and came back out. So me arriving and already being like that, they're like, wow, she has a real issue with she's failing to adapt. And that was really not a good look. Then I had my
Yeah.
first clarinet assessment at Paris Island, and there was a certain master sergeant there. I'm not going to say his name on here, but he was a clarinet player, very good one, very talented man, very scary for me. And he asked me to play a scale in my assessment, and I completely blanked. I think it was like the F sharp, probably like F sharp major or something. And I just remember being frozen and I couldn't even think of how to play an F sharp on my clarinet. Like I didn't even know what pinky to put down. And so I just stood there and I started crying because went to play a note. I played like two notes and it was wrong. And he just starts yelling at me. So I started crying. And then he starts
Oh
yelling at me
no.
for crying. So, so then I'm like, that's not gonna help me stop crying. Being yelled at for crying now. So yeah, needless to say, I failed that one. So then it just it wasn't getting better at first there either. I honestly don't know how long that went on for till finally I had some good mentors come along and my Madeline Young was my section leader and she had been the one that really pushed for me on graduation day. She had sat with me and she's the one that really pushed for me to be in the music program. So she came alongside me and really mentored me and I improved and started actually being successful. I got into my logistical area. I was in public affairs, worked my way up to being public affairs chief. And
Nice.
as I got promoted, I was sergeant of the guard. I was police sergeant, and I started to actually really enjoy myself there. I had a lot of
Hmm.
fun with the unit. We would have our ultimate frisbee days and made a lot of really good friends there. I think the morale, of course, there's going to be highs and lows
Right.
where you go, but we were a pretty tight group. And being at Paris Island, a lot of people get frustrated because we don't get to travel. We don't get to do a lot of the TED trips. We're not,
Oh,
if
that's true.
if anyone really deployed during that time, it wasn't going to be us. So if you wanted to do more of the green side things, there weren't really many options. We didn't even do the gas chamber because the recruits had priority and they just, I guess,
Hmm.
have extra time for us. Um, but we did get to do some green side things still. And of course, the range every year. And I got to do pistol qual. So that was cool.
Now
Uh,
you were you guys at Paris Island part of the security force or anything as your secondary
they
mission? Did you
stopped
have
that
one? Did they?
before I got there. They stopped it. I think it was really just because there was no need to deploy.
Hmm.
So, no, none of that. We just focused on the music side mostly, and then we would go out when the recruits weren't using we did the day course and the night course, or we got to go do the confidence course now and then.
Yeah. Now,
Um,
for people that don't know, when you're in the band at one of the depots, it's every Thursday, every Friday. You've got those ceremonies that you have to do, and it's, what is it, like four, maybe five times in a year that you don't have those. But it's pretty demanding and it's constant over and over and over and over. So the monotony of that kind of gets old as well, very quickly. So when there's not a whole lot else to do, it could be very frustrating.
yeah, and then even the big one that we all get excited about is Mardi Gras, getting to Mardi Gras. So
Hmm.
It was our turn and I was there for 4 years because I had the 5-year contract.
Mhm.
So we went to Mardi Gras, and that is not my scene. So I didn't have a whole lot of fun with it. I was the sober one staying back in the room trying to be ready to help clean up any incidents that happened.
Yeah.
And there were a couple, but we did have some fun. We went to do the Big E up in, I think that was
Oh yeah.
Massachusetts. So
Uh-huh.
being from New York, my parents were able to come over. And at that time I was, because I met my now husband at the School of Music,
Hmm.
and we were dating long distance, and we were engaged to get married at that point. So I got to go wedding dress shopping after we did our parade and we're done with the day. Got to do that with my mom. So that was special. And I really enjoyed our Georgia gigs. Going to
Yeah.
Georgia, it was just those were really pretty when we went there, and it still felt like we were getting away. Just
Yeah.
Cleveland.
Yeah. Even though it wasn't really that far, but still it's somewhere, you know. And Georgia is definitely pretty country. Now, what were you doing parades there? What kind of were you doing in Georgia?
We did some. I think my favorite was there was a sit down concert that we did, and now I'm not going to be able to remember the name of it. But it was at this really pretty place. They never had horses there, but there was like a little horse stable set up right
Hmm.
there. Like the Country Gardens or something. I don't remember now. But that was
Interesting.
always it was a really just pretty setup, and we did that each year. And that, yeah, I think that would be probably my favorite. Although really all the concerts we did were fun. Once I felt
Yeah.
like once I was more successful, we really played well as a band, even though we were a very young band. Most of us were out of high school
Hmm.
at that time.
So,
Um,
if you don't mind, I'd like to talk a little bit about the confidence factor of being a musician. You know, and you were talking about, especially at the beginning, right? You're told, no, you failed, no, you failed, no, you failed, and then finally, okay, you make it. But that continues to happen, continues to happen. It's like a beat down. So mentally speaking, you're second guessing everything. You're not, as a musician, you want to just throw it out, and just be confident and push it. And typically it's going to kind of work itself out. But whenever you have that mental block and you're being told, nope, you're failing, you're failing, you're failing, anything like that, it messes up everything that you do. So mentally speaking, you don't even know what to do. Like you were saying, you sat in audition and you were like, I was frozen. I didn't know what to do. How did you overcome those types of obstacles personally?
it was tough, and it took me a long time, because I tried to overcome it the wrong ways, and that just led me even further into, like, that's how I ended up in the psych ward again, because I got into that like victim mentality so hard. So overcoming that, I think the best thing, part of it was my faith. I'm a Christian, and at the time though, I was pretty stagnant, and um, but I did find that to be helpful, and then also just the support that I had in the musicians around me. I started struggling really hard with anxiety. I would have issues outside in ceremonial band. Once I became a first part player, I still struggled with the anxiety just because I'd get so nervous. And if you make a mistake, or even if a note's out
Right.
of tune, that's a problem. And so
Hmm.
being expected to be perfect all the time, I really just learned to overcome it by giving myself more grace and
Hmm.
not expecting, because I realized the more I expect of myself, the harder I am on myself. If they're going
Right.
to be hard on me, if I mess up, that's going to happen, but I need to give myself more grace. And so I stayed honest with the people around me and was like, hey, I need help with this. Even if I was in a more leadership position, I just tried to humble myself and not be afraid to ask for help if I knew that someone could help me with it.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
knowing that I wasn't trying to hide anything. So knowing that my section knew what I struggled with, like we would kind of just cover for each other too. If there was an extra hard spot, I'd be like, hey, I'm going to drop out for this measure so I can catch my breath and prepare for this next measure. You get that. And so communicating with my section and really just knowing that we all had each other's backs, I think
Yeah.
helped with the performance aspect anyway, confidence in that. And then confidence in my assessments. I have to give a lot of credit to um, Gunny Shaw and
Hmm.
Chief Warrant Officer Genovese. She was
Hmm.
she was my band officer at Paris Island. After a while, she came in and being a clarinet player herself, with Gunny Shaw being the enlisted conductor, the two of them together would sit down with me, and they I hate using terms like safe space because there did end up being some more coddling further down the road when I was a sergeant and getting ready to leave. I got actually pretty upset with how relaxed things kind of got. But at that point, I think there was a really good level of it. Everyone knew that there was a high expectation still, but
Hmm.
it wasn't like the hammer's waiting to drop on you if you play
Right.
wrong. So that also really helped was having them also mentor me rather than just sit there and judge me for
Hmm.
everything I was doing wrong and nitpick at those things. Yeah.
Now, would you say that the audition aspect and putting numbers to it and stuff like that was one of the things that mentally was difficult? Or do you think that if I was just playing just to have fun or whatever, and there's no number to put on it, did you find that easier?
That's a good question. I like having numbers because it gives you something to shoot for. Or
Hmm.
if I want, because at one of the times I had failed by half a point, so it kind of let me know that I was really close, and so if I could focus on working on certain categories because it broke it down, so I
Yeah.
could see the point deductions in each category, so I could pick one to work on for the next time to get me up to the score I needed. So it did kind of help having the score. I don't know. That's a tough question.
Well, I know for me, I don't like the scoring and stuff like that. I'd much rather just come in and play, because I don't care who it is. If you just sit around with your buddies and you're just kind of playing and you're doing your thing, uh, for me at least, it's way easier. The second I have somebody sitting there and they're judging me and they're giving me scores and stuff like that, it totally messes with my mind. So I'm good if, hey, we can just sit down and jam out and have fun. Yeah, I'm more relaxed. Things just flow more easily. Those types of things. And I don't know. I was always the oddball out in our rock field, and I would always say, like, the audition, why we continue to do this. Like, the person has the job, just let them do the job. They either can or they can't. But I never won that, so I was the one that didn't. Nobody liked that answer, so what are you gonna do? Yeah. So and now you just did your 5-year contract and then got out.
I did not. I reenlisted.
Okay.
Because then at the end of my 5-year contract I had been promoted to sergeant. I was honor grad at corporal's course, and
Nice.
then I did the sergeant's course online and got promoted to sergeant. And I was a squad leader. Had been, like I said, sergeant in the guard, police sergeant. I was in a lot of leadership positions, and I had really found my groove. I
Nice. Okay.
got a solo in a concert, and I was at my high at that point. I did have an ankle injury that put me out for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was recovering, they didn't want to get me an MRI and kept telling me I just strained it, but I'd actually torn my ATFL. So
Oh wow.
I was out for a while, and it took 2 months to get an MRI. When then they found, oh, you do need physical therapy. You actually tore it. Oops, our bad. They hadn't given me, like, I should have been on crutches or something, or a boot, and they didn't. They gave me like one of the flimsy little braces. Like, wear this if you
Yeah.
need. So that set me back a bit as far as ceremonial band. And then I got pregnant. So going through the pregnancy, I couldn't be out marching. And then I
Mm-hmm.
had started singing in rock band as well. And then they were concerned about standing out in the heat in general. So kind of took a
Mm.
step back and did more of the public affairs side of things and
Right.
administrative stuff. And 3 months after giving birth is when I got PCS to Miramar.
Okay.
I knew coming in it was going to be tough. I talked to them ahead of time. I was like, hey, I haven't marched and played in a while between the ankle and then the pregnancy. And now I'm in postpartum. I'm getting back into phys. Wasn't really worried physically. I've always been an
Yeah.
athlete. So the biggest concern was my playing.
Mm-hmm.
Now I had gotten my confidence up and I had been very successful playing at that point. And then moving to the Miramar band, I arrived and found out the average age. I think they said when I got there, the average age was like 27. And at this point, I was 22. I was 23. I was either 22 or freshly 23 years old.
Yeah.
So a lot of these people had degrees in music. One of the lance corporals in my section had a master's degree or doctorate. Yeah, doctor. Yeah, called him Doctor He for fun. So he had a doctorate in clarinet. So I again had to humble myself and came in as a sergeant, being one of the worst players in my section.
Yeah.
Failed my assessment there, and yeah, I was shot down real fast, and they're like, "You need to get better right now, real fast."
Yeah.
So, it's like, all right, gotta start the sprint again. But I've done this before, I can do it again. And I
Mm-hmm.
started off in better spirits that time, and I started working my butt off again, and trying to integrate into this very different band.
Mm-hmm.
And people were nice, but it wasn't quite the same. I mean, a change is a change, and
Yeah.
um, there was no one there that could really relate as far as having just given birth, having a newborn at home, going back to work with my baby at home and trying to deal with that as well. And my hormones still trying to figure out what they were doing. Um, so I had started working on that, and then that's when COVID had hit. So this was 2020.
Mm-hmm.
She was born at the end of 2020, so 2021 now. And they kept asking me if I wanted the COVID vaccine, and I said no. Declined it, and it was fine at first until then they really started. They started.
They,
Are you
they
gonna
hounded
get it?
everybody.
Are
Yeah.
you gonna get it now? And I was like, no, no, I'm not. Thanks for asking again. Told you 10 times now, no. And then yeah, then I got real serious. Then they're like, all right, well, if it's a no, then you can go on down to see Sergeant Major and sign your negative paperwork. You know, she's got a page 11 for you for saying no. And I was like, hold up, like, can I? So I went to medical and I went to talk to someone and I asked for a medical exemption because I was like, I'm
Mm.
eating my baby and I would like to have another child. And I personally knew someone who was having some side effects after
Yeah.
getting it. So I was like, I would really like to decline and wait until there's some more research or something. And they said, well, sorry, you can only get an exemption medically if you get it and have an anaphylactic reaction. Then you can get exempted for the boosters. Okay. Well,
Wow.
can't do that then. So they said the only option is to file for a religious exemption. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I did. The hard thing was this was not a religious issue.
Yeah.
So here I am being put in a position to say I am needing a religious exemption, but then they're like, well, why? All these other, like, is there a pastor that's saying not to get it? Like, who are you? Because this pastor said it's fine, and this religious leader says it's fine. So
Mm-hmm.
for you, how are you now going to say you've got all these other vaccines coming in, and now you're saying this? Like, this is political. I was like, I'm really not trying to make a political stance here. Like, I have my
Right.
reasons, and I'm telling you, this is my only option now. So this is how I'm going to go about it. So I wrote up like a 3-page essay trying to argue my case
Yeah.
for a religious exemption. I would manage to, I mean, there were some parts that were religious reasons. Like I had prayed about it. I even fasted about it. And
Mm-hmm.
I did feel like God was telling me through my prayer and my reading my Bible that I was not to get it.
Yeah.
So I was able to throw that together. And in the meantime, they started putting in rules for those that were unvaccinated, and we became less and less in number. At first, there were about 3 others in my unit that were not vaccinated, and
Yeah.
it ended up, the pressure got put on real hard, and it ended up just being me. So once it was just me, I was the only one that had to wear a mask in the building. Okay, whatever. I did it. And then I was not allowed to play with the band indoors or outdoors. I was able to play a little bit with plexiglass. They put up plexiglass for a while in between us all
Yeah.
outside. And I was able to play a little bit then, but I was not allowed to play in ceremonial band because it's only 4 feet apart, not 6 feet apart. And I was not allowed to play indoors unless I was over 6 feet away. So, how am I supposed to work on blending?
Yeah.
Don't know. How am I supposed to work on my intonation with other instruments? Can't. So,
Hmm.
I became feeling very excluded. Some other people had thrown the word ostracized around, and then I got in trouble for that with the bandmaster. And there was some very, very quickly growing tension between
Yeah.
me and some of the leadership. And my peers, for the most part, were respectful about it. But I basically was just stuck in this spot. Felt like I was at the bottom of the bucket. They would all go on
Hmm.
TD trips. I wasn't allowed to travel with them. I couldn't do anything really. So um, I I just would sit there. I became supply chief. So I would sit there and do my supply chief stuff by myself. And then the band would come back from the TAD trips, having all their inside
Yeah.
jokes, and um and it got pretty
It
isolating.
gets old quick.
Yeah. And the whole time too, I'm just not sure what's happening because they were making up the rules as they went. They didn't know what was
Yeah.
happening. And my band officer, he really did try. He tried to be there for me as much as he knew how to, but it really
Hmm.
there wasn't much. Um, so it, yeah. I was a urinalysis observer. I got to do that.
Oh,
So
fun times. Yeah.
yeah, I was one of their top picks for that. That was good. Met some people that way. Had some good bathroom chats. I was SOG, so I did have some things to do to keep me
Yeah.
busy. And then they had um, some of the restrictions had been lightened out in like with in the civilian world,
Hmm.
but not for me. And so they were doing a concert at a college campus, I think it was on, and I was not allowed to be part of the concert. And so they said you can't play in this concert because you can't be unmasked around all these people
But
inside.
nobody else was unmasked or was had masks on.
No, so what did I do? I said, well, you know what? I'm gonna support my band. They can't stop me from coming, can they? So I came and I watched the concert and I sat there and I clapped the loudest out of everyone else and I cheered them on. I gave a standing ovation. I showed up and I was like part of it was out of spite, but also like I did want to
Yeah.
support. I was like, do you see this? I could be up there playing right now. I'm sitting here amongst everyone else. It was so stupid. But
Well, I will say that at Miramar specifically, because I was there for 7 months, but it was right at the beginning of COVID and stuff. Their rules that they put in place were just insane, ridiculous. And then you go 30 minutes up the road to Camp Pendleton with First Marine Division, and they're like, "We don't even care. Just go do your thing. Like we got stuff to do. We can't slow down. Here we go." And that's what they were doing. And here we are. Like you said, there had to be plexiglass. There had to be. I mean, there's so many different rules, and it was ridiculous. And the Air Wing, for whatever reason, man, they were a stickler on the rules. Uh, yeah, it was crazy.
yeah, that's true because I was allowed to go on one trip up to there when there was some kind of conductor's workshop and I got to play
Hmm.
with them because yeah, they were like, we don't care up here, she can come. So I did get to do that. And it was so exciting to get to do that stuff. I couldn't even do there were some field things that they did too, and I couldn't do it because I was still postpartum technically.
Yeah.
Even though I was PTing and stuff, I technically should not have been doing that. So I missed out on some of that stuff as well. I got to do the mess night that we did out in We just like laid out in the sand. I don't even remember at this point what there was like that separate base where the range was. We went and did our rifle club.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. I don't know what it's called, but I know what you're talking about.
We went out there and just slept in our bags out there for a mess
Yeah.
night. So yeah, got to do that. Um, but that pretty much came to the conclusion of my time. I was 6 years in. I went to sergeant seminar while I was there, and I
Hmm.
was coming up. I was a few months away from coming up on my time of service eligibility um, to get promoted to staff sergeant. Hopefully, I was hoping in the next year I would be able to get promoted, but my exemption had been denied. So I
Hmm.
appealed it, and my appeal was up. Who knows where, Pentagon or something. It had gone off, and it took months. And I was
Yeah.
waiting and waiting. And so again, they're just making up rules whenever and whatever they want. I signed a page 11. I was getting threatened with more paperwork. At one point, there was a threat of like NJP for people who weren't getting it. So I went to the legal office and ended up having to talk to someone there about what might
Wow.
happen. And it was not fun. I've always been a rule follower. So
Hmm.
for me, at that point, I was so conflicted. But I just all I knew was like I had to stand firm in my decision. I was
Yeah.
not going to just bend at that point, and I was like, if this is God's will for me, which like at that point I really felt like it was because it was such a hard decision, and normally that's not something I would do. I would normally be like Marine Corps, aye
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I made the decision to pull my appeal, and they had been threatening to kick me out for months. So I didn't know when it was going to happen. So we had to go ahead and make decisions. Seth had my husband. He reached out to the job that he had had previously before getting furloughed with COVID, and he was offered a full-time position in Nashville. So we ended up purchasing a house. And I was like, well, now we
Nice.
have 90 days to move into this house. So I need to get out now. So I pulled my appeal, which then meant that I was getting kicked out because my exemption was
Hmm.
denied. If I wasn't appealing it, that meant I was getting in trouble. So yeah, I really didn't care to look into it that much. It was some or whatever article 15. I got kicked out for disobeying a lawful order.
Yeah.
So that way it wasn't being kicked out for not getting the vaccine. It was I was getting
Hmm.
kicked out for disobeying a lawful order. So yep, got my DD 214. I did get an honorable discharge. That
Yeah, they
was
couldn't they
as
couldn't take that away. Uh, just based on the reasonings for it or whatever, they couldn't take an honorable away from anybody for
they
those
were
reasons.
they were giving some people is other than honorable. What's between that and honorable? Right, 'cause there's one in between. I pushed so much of it out of my brain at this point,
Yeah,
but
I'll be honest, I don't know.
whatever's under honorable, that's what a lot of people were getting. But the when I sat down with the whole chain, and for the third maw, they were
Yeah,
like, well, we looked at your entire, it's like spotless, your record. So um, they went
yeah.
ahead and gave me honorable. So I got out, moved here, and I dealt with a lot of feelings of shame, and I do still kind of struggle with it. I don't like to tell people that I'm a veteran because I don't like my story that goes along with it. A lot of what I just said was negative. I did have good times, and I am proud I that I did sign up. I am proud that I
Hmm.
did. Aside from meeting my husband in that job, I kind of wish that maybe I think I would have been more successful in a different job. But um, I prayed a lot about it, and looking back, I think this was God's plan for me. I'm now a stay-at-home mom, and my husband is the breadwinner, which is the way that we had wanted it as well. Now that I have a second child and I can be home with them, my
Hmm.
depression has been gone now, and there was a lot that I didn't say that went into that. That was also circumstantial at the time that I went through.
Hmm.
That also went into the whole victim mentality, something that I wish was different. You get all these briefs, like the sapper briefs, and it's a
Yeah.
lot of it's pushed on you like this is wrong, this is wrong. If something if something like this happened, you better tell someone. This is not
Yeah.
okay. And I ended up telling someone about experiences that I had, and it ended up kind of backfiring for me. And it was this long, drawn out process that I regretted getting myself into. Anyway, so there are definitely things that I wish had been different. Um, and so I still do deal with a lot of negative feelings that like
Hmm.
I wish this had been different or this had been different. And so I don't like to talk about it. And a lot of people don't understand what being a musician in the Marine Corps is like.
Yeah.
A lot of people make fun of us, or they're like, "Oh, so you just went around played you're playing out all day? Yeah, what great help you were. And if you didn't go to combat, then you're not worthy of a congratulations." And um, so
I would say that that is a small number of individuals that are like that, to be honest with you, especially in the veteran community, because everybody, it really doesn't even matter what the job was. At least people I talk to, and they're like, yeah, whatever. We're all veterans. We're supporting each other, whatever. So I'd encourage you. There's a lot of veteran groups out there that are like that. So, if you can get involved, Marine Corps League is one, so if you can get involved in those types of organizations, then I think that would help help you in that the way you're feeling towards it and everything. And you'll see that not everybody's like that. Uh, but there are those that are out there. But for the most part, I think that if you get around the right people, you won't have to worry about that.
that'd be good. I know there's one here. I haven't really reached out or anything. It is typically more well accepted here when people, because if someone knows I mean, I'm right by military town. We didn't really choose to be there. Our realtor let us where we are. But when I say 6 years of service, if people know the military, they know if you've done 6 years, that's a weird number. It's not a multiple of 4 or 5. So what did you do?
Yeah.
Um, so I have explained if they kind of like give a look, I feel like
You
6,
know,
I tell them, but
the the great thing that especially talking about the COVID thing for you is everyone saw what they did. They said, no, what we did was wrong, right? And they even came back and said, hey, for those that want to come back in and what have you, hey, you're welcome to come back and this and that. So they saw that it was wrong. And I think the majority of people, and there's a lot of individuals that have gone through this, the same thing that you have, but you look across the nation, the majority of people are like, yeah, we get it. Like COVID, and I think that's all you have to tell people. Oh, yeah, you only did 6 years. Yeah, COVID. I wouldn't take the shot. And immediately they'd be like, oh yeah, okay, whatever. 'Cause I knew lots of people that was like, nah, I ain't doing it. And some caved eventually. They tried to wait it out as long as they could, and hoping that it would change, and it never did. I only ended up, I got the one shot, that was it. And then after that, I was like, no, I'm good. But luckily, it had changed since then. But yeah, I think everybody understands the whole COVID thing. We as a nation screwed that one up.
that was pretty funny. I got an email, and it was like, once a Marine, always a Marine in the subject line. I was like, yeah, yeah, really? You didn't make me feel that way at the time. I felt they were, I mean, some got it a lot worse than I did. Some were treated like straight up criminals. But
Yeah.
I yeah, I couldn't help but laugh at that one. And I got a call from a recruiter, and they asked if I was interested, and I was like, no, I've moved on at this point. There's no Marine Corps base near me. We've bought a house. I have another kid. I'm not gonna leave them here
Yeah.
to go back in. I wouldn't be able to go back in, being that I got out as a sergeant and was not. I did end up passing my last assessment in because I didn't want to leave with a negative fit rep.
Yeah.
Um, so which we thought would happen anyway, being that I was getting kicked out or admin sept. But I had meritorious stuff that had not been applied to the last one because it was right after my last fit rep. So
Hmm.
because I had other meritorious things, I actually ended up getting a good fit rep getting out, but I was determined I would not fail an assessment on my way out. So I did pass that, and but I could not go back in to the band, and
Yeah.
then going into another MOS from being a sergeant, it would have been difficult. So yeah, I said no thanks.
Yeah. I
but
don't blame you.
I'm a lot
Uh,
better off now. I'm a lot
yeah.
happier. Um, I think the Marine Corps is great. I don't talk bad about the Marine Corps. My situation, my time in was very unique, I think,
Hmm.
and from the very start. Um, so yeah, I don't like to talk bad about it. It's just one of those things that is my special story, and it is what it is.
Yeah. I will tell you from doing these podcasts and talking to many, many different people so far, as much as you feel like maybe your experience was a negative experience and stuff like that, there are so many people that have had those types of experiences in the military. Uh, and a lot of times they don't want to talk about it at all. But I think this is just me personally. I think it's good to share it, get it off your chest, let people know, and then it's out there. You don't have to worry about it, and then you can kind of move on from where you were. But I always tell everybody, anybody else that had a negative experience in the military, I always tell them your story is important and what you do and what you did was important. It may not have worked out the way you wanted, but it was still important, and people need to hear that story. So I thank you for coming on and doing it.
Thanks. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I ask everybody toward the end of the podcast, do you have any words of wisdom, any type of thing like that that you want to share with everybody before we kind of end it here?
I would say don't let other people influence how you feel about a situation. Just because the majority feels a certain way or thinks you should feel a certain way, you need to decide that for yourself and fight for yourself, whether it's mental health or just making a hard decision or an unpopular decision.
Yeah, that's really good. Dang, look at you go. I should have you on more often and you talk about that stuff.
The
That's
hard
good.
way.
That's how we all learn. That's how we all learn, by making mistakes and the hard way and all that type of stuff. At least that's how I learn. I don't know about everybody, but that's how I learn, making mistakes. So, but hey, Victoria, thanks for coming on and doing this. I truly appreciate you. You have a very good story. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. You learned a lot along the way, and I think this will be a good podcast for people to listen to that maybe have gone through the same stuff that you've gone through, and to see that there is light on the other side and that you're doing well. And I'm proud of you and your husband, what you guys are doing. So keep up the good work. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Hey, to all the listeners out there, if you're struggling, you need help, anything like that, don't forget the VA does have some great resources. You can always dial 988, press option 1. You can always text 838-255 or go to veteranscrisisline.net and click on the chat icon. Any of those options will put you in contact with somebody that can help you out. But remember, one veteran life lost is one too many. I care about you. No, Victoria cares about you. The whole veteran community cares about you. So please reach out for help. And if you're out there, you're not struggling, reach out to the buddies that you served with. Ask them how they're doing. And if they need that helping hand, please give it to them. All right, one last time, thank you for coming on. I truly appreciate it. To all the listeners, stay
Ton
motivated
Tavern,
and change your
birthplace
socks.
of the Corps. We as Marines hold this history close to our hearts. Wouldn't it be spectacular if the establishment was born again? The Ton Legacy Foundation, a nonprofit 501c3, is taking the task and is looking to the Marines to once again save the day. Help the Lost Art podcast in raising funds to help get the Ton built once again only 100 yards from the original establishment in Philadelphia. We are looking for Marines to donate $25 representing the upcoming 250th birthday of the Corps. Spread the message and help establish the Ton, a place for Marine brethren to gather and remember our historic beginning. Go to the Lost Art GoFundMe page and donate today. The Ton Legacy Foundation, reestablishing our birthplace.